Nicol's Commentary, Volume 3, Quaremead, Ugley, October 10th, 1945. A note on the law of fate. The first of two videos from this group meeting. When we struggle against identification, many unnecessary emotions disappear. What does it mean to struggle against identification? This question brings us to ask ourselves, what is it in myself that makes me identify with this or that event or that situation? The answer is that it is one's own level of psychology. We were speaking last time about this so important point, namely that we all have a certain psychology that causes us to react and behave as we do. In my case, if I can begin to see the psychology that I take for granted in myself, which has been acquired from innumerable influences on me from childhood, and which in the work would be called, in my case, Nicoll, and if I begin to try to separate from some of these habitual mechanical reactions to Nicoll, I will then have a chance to change my level of being. But if I cannot see Nicoll, I shall not be able to change in my being. Now, Nicoll, in my case, is called personality, and personality is under the law of accident. But there is a certain part of this acquired psychological machinery, which in my case is Nicoll, that is called false personality. And this is under even more laws than Nicoll is under. What are the characteristics of false personality? They consist in ascribing everything to oneself through vanity or pride. The acquired personality itself may contain both good and bad things, good and bad habits, but what keeps them active is really the power of the false personality, which holds everything together just as it is and makes change of being so very difficult and such a process of being wounded and hurt and upset. Let us speak again about the law of accident and the law of fate, but I must begin with that it is not at all an easy idea to understand. In other words, it is something that you have to understand rather than something that is explained in so many words to you. The first thing that we must grasp is that we have different levels in us. Man is a small cosmos, a microcosmos, reflecting to a certain great extent the greater cosmos or microcosmos. The microcosmos is given to us in the form of the ray of creation that you all can see based on different levels. A high level, such as, let us say, the level of the sun, is under 12 orders of laws, and the lower level under which we live is under 48 orders of laws. The work says, as a general formulation, that the essence in us is under 24 orders of laws, and personality taken as a whole is under 48 orders of laws. Now, supposing that a man is very identified with his personality through his false personality, which latter is under even greater number of laws, the work says that such a man is under the law of accident. He may be killed when he should not be killed. That is, he may be killed although the law of through the law of accident, because he is identified with his personality. All this work consists from one side in not identifying with the personality, particularly with the false personality, and in separating from the personality. If you're completely identified with yourself as you are and take yourself for granted and do not see that you have anything called a psychology or a personality, if you always act mechanically from your acquired personality and take it as yourself, you're not under the law of your fate, which belongs to essence, or the more internal side of you. Everything you do is, in a sense, unreal because you are not really doing it from yourself. As understanding grows in a man or a woman in the work, they see more and more that lots of things they have been thinking and saying are not real, and do not really belong to them at all, but have been acquired by imitation. Now, you know that the work says that understanding is the strongest force that we can create in ourselves, and the more understanding that we have in our personal work, the more results we shall get. When a man does something from his understanding, he does not act mechanically from his false personality. He is acting something more internal, something deeper. And when this is the case, he is more likely to be under the law of his fate. But when he acts from the purely external side of himself, from some excited, dutiful side, he is more likely to be under the law of accident. A man who does everything because he wants to be just the same as other people is, of course, a man who is not acting from anything internal. He is acting from the outside of himself, the outer side of himself, from the personality, speaking in general. He does not really think what he is doing. He does not really think about what he is doing or even feel what he is doing, save that he is doing his duty as he was taught. He is going with the mechanical stream of things, and he has no trace of individual thinking or of individual feeling in regard to any situations that arise, but always act mechanically according to the formation of his own personality, in other words, there is no real man there, no real individual, but a kind of mass-produced man. Such a person is under the law of accident, more or less, and such a man has very rarely any sincere moments with himself. He goes with his psychological machinery that has been laid down in him and simply is his machinery. That is, he is completely identified with his personality and takes his personality as himself. He never questions what he does. He never thinks about what he does. Such a man belongs to the mechanical circle of humanity and is a long way from the conscious circle of humanity. His views are stereotyped, his buffers are fixed, his attitudes are acquired, and so there he is, quite an excellent kind of man, but quite asleep to himself. Such a man is not under the law of his fate. Now, supposing such a man begins to observe himself in the light of the teaching of this work and begins to notice what he says and how he behaves, and occasionally begins to wonder why he says these things and always behaves like that. Such a man is beginning to observe himself, and through self-observation begins not to identify with himself. This man, this woman, has begun to pass into a more internal person, himself, herself. They are beginning to separate from the personality, and especially from the false personality which governs external life. They're beginning to pass into themselves, into a deeper level of themselves. In other words, they're beginning to pass into what is really in them, what is essential. And through this struggling against being identified with themselves as they mechanically are, they inevitably find that many emotions that they have hitherto taken as necessary become unnecessary. They find that many unnecessary emotions disappear from their lives, and this also applies to many thoughts, many ways of thinking, which they formerly thought were so important. All this means a movement inwards, towards the essential part of oneself, which is the real part. And this movement begins to make a man or a woman pass more and more under the law of their essential fate, to be what they are and what they should be essentially. Eventually, they may come under the law of their own fate.